Greetings, everyone. I'm Tim Anderson, aka Renfill, and welcome to the first in my new series of videos on EverQuest 1 and EverQuest 2, where we're going to be doing a little bit of both, doing a little bit of nostalgia, a little bit of progression servers versus live servers, a little bit of talking about the comparisons between and differences between the two games, and so on and so forth. And what better place to start this first video than by heading over here to Kelethan, get the old elevator to bring me up, and we'll head on up and take a look at the Tree City, which to this day is still my favorite of all the starting zones. I traditionally play Wood Elves almost every time I play, the exception being, of course, this most recent time with the progression servers when I played a Halfling Druid, who of course is here, and we've got some raid gear, a little bit of raid gear. I've got some of the vermiculated stuff, but for the most part, this is just a normal level 50 druid, which I haven't played in a year plus since the last time I played a progression server. Anyway, if you like EverQuest 1 and EverQuest 2, and you want to talk about some of the old stuff as well as some of the new stuff, and you want to talk about the comparisons between the two games, the history of the franchise, and hopefully the future of the franchise as well, I would highly suggest that you subscribe to this channel and hit the bell icon so that you get updates on all the future content I'm going to be doing here on YouTube. And of course, if you want, you can join our Discord. All the links are below. And do me a favor, if you liked the video today, make sure to hit that like button so that I know, and leave a comment below. So without further ado, let's jump in today. We're going to be doing, first up and foremost, this is going to be sort of a comparison video. I'm going to be talking about some of the things that used to exist in the game that don't anymore. I'm not going to be talking about P99 a lot. I have played a lot on Project 1999, and those of you who have been around for a while know that I used to stream Project 1999 quite a bit, and I've run, I think, 3 or 4 different guild communities there with our Saga Blasphemia gaming community. We went and did our winter gaming sessions there like 3 times, maybe 4. We've also done a lot of the progression servers, including the most recent one. So, but be that as it may, though I think that P99 serves a purpose and it's a good place, what I really want to do is focus on the franchise as a whole, and where it's going in the future, hopefully. And that means talking about the game and its current owners, which is Dark Paw Studios. So we're going to be talking mostly about the game as it exists today, with some look back at nostalgia, but we won't be talking about P99 that much. So I would say that one of the things that for me is probably the most notable difference above and beyond some of the, like Corpse Sons and stuff we'll talk about, is the fact that this game didn't used to have a compass, which you'll notice right here at the top, and also a mini map, which we now have here. And of course, you can have your classics, which don't have all the POIs, but I have Brill's maps downloaded, which gives you all the POIs. So back in the day, you had sense heading, which you had to level up if you wanted to know which direction you were heading, and it was really important to pay attention to landmarks. Which is just kind of like in the real world as well. Before Google Maps and GPS, you really had to, if someone told you, go north on this highway for 1.2 miles until you see the white gazebo on the left, you would be looking for a white gazebo. One of the most, I think for me, the most prevalent memories I have in my mind is like when you come out of Thurgadden in Velious, and you're heading south, and you get to the sort of the open area right there, and the ice caves or the ice worm caves are ahead. To the right is the Druid Rings, but to the left are the Wizard Spires, and if you keep going left, you would get to the entrance to, I think it was what, Eastern Wastes. So thinking about waypoints like that, the Wizard Spires were a waypoint, and so knowing where that was, all you had to do is get to a high point and look for the Wizard Spires, and that would help you sort of navigate your way through that zone. Because once you got to the Wizard Spires, you would know, this way is Thurgadden, and that way is the zone line. That's all gone these days, and for better or for worse, I think that modern players coming into EverQuest wouldn't be as forgiving of a game that doesn't have a mini-map or a compass of some type. I still, especially those of you who know me, from my time in Saga Leucemia, I was very much against the idea of having a compass or a mini-map in a medieval game. I think it makes sense in a science fiction game, but at the same time, I do admit it does make these game worlds a lot easier to navigate, but easier is not necessarily always better. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that below. Beyond that, I think the next thing for me is looking at corpse runs and XP loss, because both of those kind of go hand in hand. So it used to be when you died, you lost all your gear and you lost experience points. Now, both of those were traumatic in and of themselves, and having them combined together were sort of this lethal combination that in today's day and age makes people rage quit. And I don't necessarily think it needs to be that way anymore. I don't think we need to go back to that, but I do have fond memories, and I do appreciate the component of having to learn how to play. Um, that was a dice roll. I've got Fantasy Grounds open in the background, and somebody was doing a roll. Um, so I do have memories associated with being able to separate the men from the boys, so to speak, based on whether or not they died a lot and lost their gear. But I also have horrible memories, and I think most people who rated have this, of like looking back to breaking into the plains and your whole guild wiping and not having good enough gear to get back and get your original stuff, and having to wait until another guild was going to make a break-in as well to be able to go back and get your gear, and that sucked. I don't think that that's a necessary component in today's day and age, but I do appreciate that component of learn how to play, or you're going to constantly be losing your gear and constantly losing levels, which sucks, and you want to avoid the suckage as much as possible. I also love the fact that mundane armor could take you a long way in the original game, and magic gear meant something. This character in particular, obviously we were raiding the last time I played. I think we can even scroll up to the MOTD. We were raiding Plane of Hate and Fire Giants on Mondays, Plane of Sky on Wednesdays, and Plane of Fear on Fridays. And so I've got some raid gear, but I also still have like small cloth cape and small cloth sandals, which are non-stat gear, and I'm a level 50 character. And you could get into the plains and actually start raiding without needing magical gear. But magical weapons were very important. And it might still be. I haven't played live in a long time, so I'm going to be playing live in this series and testing this theory out. But it used to be that certain creatures in the game were immune to mundane weapons, so you had to have magical weapons to attack them, which meant that it was very important for new characters to get a magic weapon as soon as possible. And back in the day, that meant going into a dungeon and getting. And then I can remember being early on. It took. I don't think I had my first magical weapon until I was probably in my teens. Several weeks into the game at that point, and it was probably the dagger from um, Dvin. Was that his name? I forget the guy, the dark elf in Crushbone. Totally blanking on his name. Um, in any case, it was very important to get magical weapons, and that meant getting a group and doing group-based content. It wasn't something you could get by yourself, pretty much. You pretty much had to get a group for that. And I do miss that sort of fact that mundane armor meant something, because these days most games just start throwing magical gear at you at level 1, and you just kind of take for granted that, oh, it's magic. Magic should mean something. It should be something that only magicians and wizards and sorcerers and druids have access to. So it sort of cheapens the magical nature of a world when you can just have it all from level 1, and I do appreciate that about the old EverQuest. And also, I think that for me, scaling of mobs, and we could kind of take a look at that. I mean, I'm level 50, so it's going to be kind of hard to get a real glimpse of what I'm talking about here. But basically, running around here outside of Kelethin, if you started your character here, you're immediately going to come over here to the Druid Rings area, the old rings and stuff, and you're going to be killing all these bats and skeletons and drakelings and wolves and spiders and so on and so forth. And these are all meant to be, things that little level 1s and level 2s and all the way up to maybe level 3 or 4 can take care of. But then if you want to start getting into more difficult mobs, you would want to head over into the Orc Lift area. And once you get into that area, you'll go a little bit beyond the Orc Lift. You start getting into some mobs that you need 2 or 3 people to take on. And then once you get to Orc Hill, you're needing a full group to be able to handle Orc Hill. And then beyond Orc Hill, you would then make your way into Crushbone, which was full group territory. I'm a little bit past the lift here. Um, and I appreciate that because most of the cities and areas within EverQuest were always built like that, where everything in the direct vicinity to a city or town or outpost, thinking like Furiona Vi even as the outpost, um, those things were things you could solo and duo close to town. But the further you got away from a civilized section, the more dangerous it became until you eventually got to dungeon areas like this one. We're gonna log into Crushbone just so we can run around and take a peek at things. And I do really appreciate the way that was done back in the day and the way that sort of influenced development of many other games moving beyond. And I did an experiment on this back in the day. I made a comment circa 2015, and that I said that EverQuest was a game where dungeons could last weeks to months, and I had a bunch of people on MMORPG.com and Massively OP call me a liar. And so I took a group, got together a static group, and we uh, created new characters in Freeport, and we leveled up to about 7, went into um, Befallen, and then spent the next, I don't know, month-ish just in Befallen, leveling from level 7 up to level 20 plus over the course of multiple sessions, playing 2 to 3 hours each session, and we streamed it all as a case study in um, proving that dungeons were meant to last weeks to months. And I had people say, "Oh, that's not true. You can go in and do Befallen in a few hours if you know everything, if you have all of the keys, and if you're level appropriate. If you're starting off at level 7, you don't have any of the keys, and you didn't know your way through the zone, you don't know the zone, you've never played the zone, or anything like that, it's not something you can walk through in a matter of hours. It's going to take sessions. And it's not like you're just camping in one session for weeks. You're doing this session for 2-3 sessions, this area for 2-3 sessions, get the key, move on to the next section for 2 to 3 sessions, move a little bit deeper for 2 to 3 sessions, and so on and so forth. And we got a month out of that dungeon. And I feel like that is pretty standard for most of the dungeons in this game, in the sense that you can spend a couple of weeks at minimum in a place. This is probably one of the smallest dungeons in the game in my mind, in the sense that you could go to high teens, but high teens was about the max you would want to spend in here, whereas Befallen would take you into the mid 20s. So anyway, beyond that, the epic weapons quests. I can remember it took me about 2 years with a good guild. To get my epic weapons on my ranger. And once I had those, let's go ahead and mem a buff here because there might be people in here. And once I got my epic weapons, I then spent another about 2 years using those epic weapons before I ever needed to update them. And that was something that I think has gone away too, is uh, looking at weapons these days that you're replacing them every week, as opposed to having things that you could use for months, if not years, on a character. And that's something that has gone away. It doesn't exist anymore. Beyond that, the lack of fast travel in early games, like early EverQuest, and I think that was something I think most people I've talked to all agree that the moment that they added the teleportation books, um, it kind of just cheapened the game in the sense that it was no longer. The world felt a lot smaller, because you didn't have to rely upon. Did I just get the shiny brass shield? Holy shit! I literally on video. I cannot believe that I just got like that thing. I've had to camp. I have literally camped. I have camped for days. Where the hell? Hang on, I gotta remember how to open up my bag because I haven't played this in a while. I have played this game and camped this area for days on end and not gotten that shield to drop. And literally, I run up here, he's spawned, and it drops. I cannot believe that. That's just. I can't believe I got that on camera. That's That's gonna be a clip. I'm gonna have to clip that. Sorry, folks, I'm geeking out here. Um, talk about fast travel. I loved the fact that in the early days, if you really wanted to get around the world quickly, you needed to rely on another player, like a wizard or a druid. Boats obviously were there, and those helped. But it did help the world feel really big, and I like the fact that you could get speed spells like Spirit of the Wolf, which would help you move quicker throughout the world. Because in Dungeons and Dragons, it's never about getting somewhere as quickly as possible. It's about the journey, right? And that's what early EverQuest was all about, the journey. Obviously, as more people started playing the game, they wanted to make the game more accessible to people, and so they didn't have to, but they chose to add the teleportation scrolls or portals. Scroll book things, and that allowed for people to instantly teleport anywhere in the world, and it got rid of the need for wizards or druids in terms of their teleportation abilities, which I felt cheapened the game, and I wish they would have never done that. But um, I do miss that aspect of the game, and I do wish that more games would do that. And I will say this: I mentioned this when I was playing New World. I loved the fact that New World didn't have mounts, and the fact that fast travel was very limited in that game, and cost a currency with cooldowns and all this other stuff, which really helped you explore the world and take your time. Thinking about other games like Red Dead Redemption 2, um, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Assassin's Creed Odyssey. These are games which have fast travel waypoints, but they're few and far between, and you have to explore to get to them in the first place, which means you're going a lot of places on foot, which I really appreciate because you want the game to be big and explorable, and that's something that I feel that the teleportation books took away with EverQuest, and I do miss those because it made the world feel a lot bigger than it does feel today in the modern version. I also miss server sizes used to be very small and compact because we didn't have tens of millions of people playing the game. So like looking at, I want to say with like the most recent World of Warcraft classic servers, they did like 40 or 50,000 was like the cap on those classic servers. And the old school EverQuest, I mean, a server that had 1,000 people on it was a massive server. And you might not have known everybody in that server community, but 1,000 people made it. It felt big enough, um, and you got to know a lot of people, and it still felt crowded. They also had when they did New World, servers were launched with I think 1,000 or 2,000 capacity, um, which a lot of people complained about that. Like, oh, it's too small. We're having to wait in queues and everything else. But I actually like smaller server sizes. I'm not a big fan of, being part of a 50,000 person server where you're only ever going to know your guild and maybe a handful of other people. So I really like the old days of having smaller servers. And I think the last thing on my list here is factions and having those mean something. So obviously you'll notice here I killed an orc and I got all this faction adjustments in my chat window here. Now that doesn't really mean as much as it used to. It still can on like progression servers and stuff. Um, but it used to be that when you were playing a specific race in this game, you're blocked off from going to specific cities, and there were quest lines that you couldn't even do because you had you had the racial hatred from another group, or a faction hatred. And I love the fact that like illusionists, as an example, can cast different illusion forms on themselves, which allows them to pass barriers that would otherwise be blocked to them, or use charisma spells to boost their faction in areas so they're not kill on sight. But I really did love the fact that an illusionist could change you into another race so that you could get past the guards if you needed to sneak in. It added a really enhanced roleplay perspective to the game in my mind, and I really appreciate that. Oh, I just fell. Um, that's what happens when you're tabbed out and not paying attention. What? It begins to snow. Why is it snowing in Greater Fadark? Um, let's run over here. In any case, I think that's a good. We're 20 minutes in. That's a good first video, I think, for my take on things. Those are just some of the nostalgic components of EverQuest Classic that I do kind of miss, and I think that you know Daybreak, which is now Dark Paw and everything else, and Sony and all these other things. All the changes they've made over the years to these games have been made to hopefully improve them. We don't always agree with those changes, but I don't think it's not my place to tell them whether they're right or wrong. It's just it is what it is, and you can either play the game and enjoy it, or you can say this sucks and don't play the game. And I always have chosen to roll with the punches and play these games despite the changes. I might not agree with all of them, but that's not my place. I'm still gonna get enjoyment out of the franchises for what they are. And I think that the progression servers have given a nice balance between what used to be versus what is. But of course, those of us who are veterans, we obviously have our favorite things that we remember from back in the day, and we're always going to look back on those with those rose tinted glasses, because just like the corpse run thing, like I said, I may have fond memories of some of those things, but I also have very negative memories associated with some of those things. And the same thing with the limited fast travel, because it did make my life so much better, because I played a ranger back in the day, and so I was constantly relying on other players to port me around. And the moment they added the books in Planes of Power, it did make my life easier. It was really easy to get around, but it also, cheapened the game somewhat. So there are pros and cons to all things. In any case, if you like this video, let me know. Like it, leave a comment below, and of course, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon so that you get updates for all the future content, because I will be doing more videos on EverQuest 1 and videos on EverQuest 2 as well. So come join us, dive in, and I'll see everybody in the next episode. Thanks, folks.